disturbing a whole bunch of people, but that's kind of, the times that we're living in. Okay, so really quickly, again, this is Simon Moya Smith. I am a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation. I'm also a Chicano, and I'm a journalist and writer. One thing every autumn that happens is pumpkin spice lattes, right? We have the autumn colors. Everybody loves, Halloween. Everybody enjoys the crisp air, etc. But why does autumn um, impact Indigenous people? Why does it kind of really suck for Indigenous people? Well, let's look at the obvious, right? Come every fall comes a lot of behaviors that are anti-Native American, okay, or at least perpetuate some stereotypes, perpetuate some racist behavior, okay. So let's just start with late August, where we're at right now, and going into early September. That's the beginning of football season, which means a lot of people, not this year, but typically show up with headdresses or red face, or they are showing up in some of them even war whoop, right? There's tomahawk chops. There's, if it's the Kansas City Chiefs, the big drum. Just the other day, the Kansas City Chiefs said they're not going to change their name, but what they are going to do is they're going to ban people from wearing headdresses and painting their face um, at the games, right? But, to use their language, that only goes to about the 25-yard line. That doesn't address the real issue of dehumanization and commodification of Indigenous peoples, okay? So that's just the NFL. But then there's still hockey, right? This is also hockey season, and there's the Chicago Blackhawks. And people do show up wearing red face or headdresses, and they do have those parties where people play Indian, okay? So that's just sports, right? Typically, we're all at a baseball game, and if it's the Cleveland Indians, people are doing the tomahawk chop. So that, again, that's just professional sports. That doesn't even go down to the local level of sports. Leading into October, what we have is Halloween season, Halloween parties. This is where people will dress up as Native Americans and have headdresses, face paint, everything that you see at a football game, but in a private household, while other people are dressed as ghouls and goblins and witches and what have you. I think that the reason that a lot of people don't see it is because we have so normalized playing Native American. We've normalized the dehumanization of Indigenous people. It's almost become Americana. It's almost become as American as apple pie, right? To play Indian. And where do we learn it? I think I said this in one of the previous videos, and if not, great. One of the first lessons American students learn in the United States is that it's okay to play another race, specifically Native Americans. Where do they learn it? At the Thanksgiving play. Every year at Thanksgiving play, mommy and daddy and grandma and grandpa and teacher and principal love it, and they encourage it. So here are all these authority figures telling telling non-Indigenous kids that it's okay to play Native American, which is not. Why then are we surprised when they show up at Coachella wearing headdresses, or at a Washington football team game, or at a Blackhawks game, or at a Cleveland's game, okay, etc., etc. So these behaviors are taught and learned, even in our systems, in our school systems, where we're trying to teach, equality and inclusion, not at that level yet. Some schools are coming around to noticing, hey, that might be a little racist to, paint the kids' faces and put on headdresses and fake braids. That I think that might be wrong, but not all of them. A lot of schools still do that, and these are things that people post all the time. Again, maybe not this fall because we're hoping that kids won't be in school and exposed to COVID. But it looks like some states and some schools are going to allow it, which is ridiculous. But that's on a different topic altogether. We have to remember that the dehumanization and the commodification of Indigenous people, it continues in so many parts of our lives, and that we just don't see it unless you're Indigenous. Imagine being an Indigenous person and going to a Halloween party and somebody's there wearing red face or they're wearing a headdress, and you go over to them and you say, hey, that's really inappropriate. Try telling that to somebody who's super fucking drunk. Try telling that to somebody who doesn't think they're doing anything wrong, which we do come across a lot, whether it's a Washington football team game or a tailgate, or even at a sports bar and somebody's wearing a headdress, or a Halloween party. Try telling that to somebody who's like super drunk or just super devoted to what they're doing. Also, people will claim to be Native American to get away with shit. They'll literally claim to be a quarter Cherokee or Blackfoot to say, yeah, I'm allowed to wear this headdress. My great 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 grandma was a Cherokee princess, which again, there was no such thing. We didn't have that caste. We didn't have monarchs. So that's ridiculous. If anybody again says that they're a quarter Cherokee and they're the descendant of a Cherokee princess, ask them who the king and the queen were. Just see. They won't know. That's just again, that's the convenient Indian, which I might have said in another video as well, but it bears repeating. A convenient Indian is somebody who claims to be Native American when it serves their purpose or if they're caught doing something stupid or something racist or enabling racism. They will not be around in our communities, at our powwows, at our ceremonies, in the community doing anything, but they claim to be indigenous when they fuck up or when they're ethnically bankrupt. So that's another thing that unfortunately a lot of people do to continue the behavior, which leads me into this as well. A lot of these people that claim to be Native American do so, and they don't see natives outside of themselves. If you claim to be Native American, and if that's part of your family lore, not your bloodline, but your family lore, that you're somewhere down the line, a quarter something, how are you going to be able to see the Native American community outside of you? How are you going to be able to see other natives going, and then those of us that have been called the R word or an Injun or a savage, how are you going to see us if you claim to be native? Which is unfortunate, but it's very ubiquitous. It happens in my industry in journalism. It happens in many industries at universities. People claim to be native to get what they want, or to fill some sort of ethnic bankruptcy, or to get a job, or to try to get people to back off because they think they can wear a headdress or paint their face because their great-great-grandma was a Cherokee princess. You see the theme going here. People think they can do what they want and say what they want when it comes to indigenous people. Now, there's a slow change happening right now, but not that fast. That's why, again, the Kansas City Chiefs came out saying that only 25, or excuse me, that they aren't going to allow headdresses or face paint in the stands. They don't really say anything about the name. They really don't understand that it isn't just about a racial slur. And I'll say it again, over and over again. It is about the dehumanization and the commodification of a race of people, of real living people, and persecuted people. We are the smallest racial minority in our ancestral land. So they think that just because they don't see us out here, or they don't see us at their game, that there isn't a protest, when there is. There is a protest of the dehumanization and the commodification of indigenous people. Let's see. Let me read some of the questions here. Sorry. What do you think of the idea of teaching local Native American languages in non-native schools, like a semi-widespread thing, pipe dreams, I know, maybe even misguided? No, I think that, if I'm reading your question correctly, it's like, I think it's important to maybe teach a little bit of the history, maybe not the language. Unfortunately, a lot of people will take what is ours and they will try to commodify it. They'll try to make money off of it. That's why I go back to the commodification. So that also happens with our spirituality. Some people, we don't know their intentions, will show up to our ceremonies and they'll learn it and then turn around, go somewhere else and sell it. And we fear that. We fear how that, what does that look like for our communities if you're just going to take stuff and sell it? I mean, look on Etsy. In Colorado, in all the places in the West, you can find trading posts owned by white folks benefiting off of Native American culture and language, etc. I think what we need to do in the school system is teach all the students and the teachers about the land that they're on, that the land that they're on is indigenous land. If you are not native, if you are not indigenous to the territory you're at, you are a direct beneficiary of aggressive native removal, regardless who you are. There's all across the United States, into Canada and Mexico, there's people living in areas that were originally inhabited by indigenous people. So I think it's about educating students and the teachers and the community about the land that they're on and how they became to be there. Let me see. Other questions. Has the casino industry helped Native Americans as a whole? Yes and no. I mean, yes, they have in certain areas, but there's going to be certain tribes and certain nations that are geographically closer to maybe a hub. So I believe it's Gila River, and they're right next to Phoenix, right next to Scottsdale. So they benefit. They benefit a lot. Where there's others that are so geographically isolated that they're not really getting much of a benefit. It's good for our sovereignty, and I think that's what people don't know. Why do Indians get to have casinos and other people don't? Well, because we're separate sovereign nations. Separate sovereign nation means that we have a government to government relationship with the United States. That means that the state really isn't involved that much. Since we are separate and we're sovereign, we have our own president, our own treasurers. We have that sovereignty. So that's why you see casinos, and in certain places you'll see the marijuana industry butting up in, pun intended, butting up in certain states that have kind of outlawed it. But on a reservation, you basically have left the United States. Once you enter Indian country, you at least legally left the United States. Does the casino industry pay it forward to the people? Yes. Yeah, in many cases they do. Remember, there's 574 federally recognized tribes. That doesn't include state recognized or non-recognized. So I can't speak for every one of the casinos, but yes, there are the casinos that give back to the people and really do a lot for the community. Let's see, there was another question. I use the word Indian and I used to live on the res. Okay, yeah, you can. I mean, I will still use Indian, but the problem is with that is it really perpetuates this idea that we're Indian, like from India, and we're not. It's completely incorrect, okay? So, but I have used it before in conversation when somebody says, so what are you? And I will say, I am Oglala and I am Chicano. And they'll be like, what's that? Where are those things from? And they'll literally put it that way. So I say Indian. And they're like, oh, a Native American. Yes, there you go. You got it. From here, right? And we come across it a lot. People go, do you speak Native American? Which is ridiculous. I just got done saying that there are 574 federally recognized tribes, not including state recognized, not including unrecognized. So that's a lot of languages, okay? Oglala and Seminole aren't the same language. And Oglala can't speak Tulalip to a Tulalip, and a Tulalip can't speak Oglala, or Tulalip to an Oglala. These are very different languages, just like Italian and maybe Russian, right? They're different. They're not the same. Let's see. What is this one? What's the percentage of Native American? Hang on. You guys are gonna make fun of me. Give me a second. Alright. There we go. Let's try this. What's the percentage of Native American does a person need to have to be recognized by their tribe? That's tribe by tribe. That's nation by nation. Every nation sets their blood quantum. I believe mine is 30%, I think, if memory serves. I think the Cherokee is a lot lower than that, but then I think also the Mohawk is 75%. So to be enrolled in your tribe is chosen by the tribe. They choose the blood quantum level. Let's see, you may have seen and answered this question before, but what would be some hypothetical examples of good media representation of Native Americans in both works set in historical times and in modern times? Let's see. I think there was a movie called Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, and I think it was one of the first times we ever saw a two-spirit in cinema. If you don't know what two-spirit is, certain indigenous nations and tribes have two-spirit societies, two-spirit holy people, and that means they don't identify as a male or a female. They are either LGBT, they're LGBTQ, but the difference with two-spirit is the difference in how Christianity sees homosexuality. When the Christians came here, they believed that homosexuality, and they still do, that homosexuality is bad, right? For us, it wasn't, and it still isn't. We don't consider it bad. And again, I'm not speaking for all tribes. I'm just saying that with regard to the nations that have two-spirit societies, we don't see it as a bad thing. Actually, we see it as a very holy thing, and we also see it as a gift that, as a straight person, you can only see with one spirit. But if you are LGBTQ, you can see with two spirits, and that's a blessing. That's an honor. And they do give blessings and they do give honors, and that's a big difference in the communities, or the big difference between Christianity and native communities, native tribes and nations that have two-spirit societies. So that's one. Sorry, that went off on what two-spirit is, but yes, I think the movie is Little Big Man, and that's kind of modern times. Also, modern representations in media, all you got to do is hashtag native Twitter, and you're going to find a lot of natives doing a lot of great work with native representation. Let's see. I know I'm going to scroll back because there were some questions that I missed somewhere. Somebody just wrote, go R word. See? You're not going to change people's mind. You really aren't. People are going to say and do whatever they want with regard to, indigenous people, and they really don't. They really don't give two shits what if they would say that word to a native to our face. Though, I encourage you to go to YouTube and go, The Daily Show, and you'll see us, up against, I think it was 8 or 4 fans of the Washington football team. And at the end of the show, one of the fans commented that they wouldn't say the R word to our face, or that they wouldn't have worn their R word jacket to the interview, right? So go and look. Anyway, it's on YouTube. It's a Daily Show. It's with Jon Stewart. It's me and 7 other indigenous people against 4 fans of the Washington football team. Go check it out when you get a second. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, back to why autumn is very brutal for indigenous people. So not a lot of people know this, or at least let's just say there's a lot of inconsiderate actions and a lot of ignorance and arrogance when it comes to us in the autumn. So come November, a lot of people don't know this, November is Native American Heritage Month. When do you think Native American Heritage Day is? Native American Heritage Day shares the same day as Black Friday. It's ridiculous. Nobody is standing in line, or at least up until this point, no one's been standing in line, waiting in the dark, cold night, turning to the other person in line saying, "Oh, by the way, happy Native American Heritage Day." Nobody does that. So, and then here's the problem: Black Friday. I mean, think of it this way: Native American Heritage Day should be earlier in November. If it were earlier in November, then people could teach, or the teachers could, offer lessons, invite speakers, and like we mentioned earlier, maybe learn about the land that the school is on, and the students can learn who the indigenous people were before aggressive Indian removal. See, there's the word again, Indian. So I think that with it being on Black Friday, I mean, that is insult to injury. Not only is it on Black Friday, schools aren't even in to educate the kids on Native Americans during Native American Heritage Month. I don't know how much Lakota you know, but as an Oglala Lakota, what is it like to hear how, as a stereotypical Native American greeting, considered its origins in the Lakota word how? Well, yeah, just right there, as I see you wrote it, so there's how, H-O-W, and then there's how, H-A-U. Now, we still say how to each other, but we don't do it like you see it in television, like in movies. Nobody's standing, natives aren't going face to face with each other saying how. Nobody's doing that, okay? But you'll say how kola, or something like that, right? Or sometimes in the morning, we'll just say hikani washte, or we'll truncate it to hikani. Hikani means morning, right? So good morning, hikani washte. So there isn't a lot of native. Honestly, I've never gone to another Oglala or another Lakota and said how. No, that we don't. We have other ways of greeting one another without going down that route. Okay, so anyway, this is again, and I'm going to be on for another minute or so. This has been about why autumn is so cruel in a way to indigenous people, but also about what's the solution. The solution is we need to educate people about what is right and what is wrong. It is wrong to dress up as native. It's always wrong to dress up as native. It's always wrong to wear the headdress. I'm Oglala and I haven't earned the right to wear a headdress, so I don't wear one. It's always wrong to play another race, whether if that's Native or African American or Asian. So please keep that in mind every Halloween. But let's not have that cognitive dissonance where we don't see where it started. And it started in elementary schools. That's the first place that young American kids learn that it's okay to play another race, which it is not. It is not okay to have themed parties, again, even around Thanksgiving, which has happened before. Even when I was at the University of Denver for 1 year, they had a Pilgrims and Indians parties, and the boys showed up as pilgrims, the girls showed up in very short faux what is that called? It's like a, what is it? Jesus, I can't remember the name right now. It's a loincloth, but I can't remember the material. But anyway, they're showing up in it, and it's horrible because also it launches us into the discussion of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and about how Indigenous women are 2.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than women of any other demographic. But these aren't things that are taught in school, unfortunately. So we're trying to get that out there. And so that people will understand, it's like hypersexualizing Indigenous women while they're 2.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted is just it's ridiculous, and it's frightening. Let's see. I've always found Okay, as a non-Native American, I have always found the concept of Thanksgiving a bit weird. Yeah, it is a bit weird when you think about it. I mean, a couple years ago I was on NPR, and I told the truth about it, and that they were what they called settlers, which aren't settlers, by the way. They're invaders. You first have to invade before you can settle, right? They were cannibals, because while they were haphazardly digging around looking for gold, which was the rumor in Europe, they believed that if you came to the United States, the 13 colonies, you could just dig haphazardly and you would find gold ready for the taking. So they came here and did that. Well, while they were digging haphazardly looking for gold, what weren't they doing? They weren't planting crops. So they were hungry, they were cold, they didn't know how to till the soil, they didn't know how to farm in the new world, they called it, right? So what did they do? They were also grave robbers, looking for gold, looking for any sort of precious metals that they could take. So there's a freshly buried indigenous body, and they ate from the flesh of the recently dead indigenous person. This is fact check. Look it up. The Lies My Teacher Told Me by I think it's James Lowen. Go look that up. Again, this is not conjecture. This is fact checked data or history. Let's see. I said I was going to do it for one more minute, but I'll answer this one. But is that ignorance about how born from innocent misunderstanding, or does it contribute to the exoticization otherism of Native Americans, like as Asian American view? How? Yes, I mean there was clearly when they got here, we didn't speak English, they didn't speak our languages, so there were certain introductions. But again, I think it goes back to the romanticized idea and stereotypes of indigenous people, that everybody thinks all Indians say how, right? Or all Indians wear headdresses, or all Indians were half naked on the back of a horse riding down on the plains, which isn't true at all. There were certain tribes that are plains tribes. Mine is a plains tribe, but that's not the case with everybody. So it's just, I think it becomes problematic when we just like stamp it onto every tribe and say how, and because they're not being genuine. They're not like, oh, I really want to know the language. No, they're just being ridiculous, and some of them are just being dicks. You're a teacher, rarely heard from, definitely needed. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Simon Moya Smith, or here on the app's account. Definitely give a follow. I hope you learned a little bit something today about why autumn is so aggressive and so hostile toward indigenous people. And imagine if we weren't in the time of COVID, last year, and you're a kid in a school, you're growing up, and let's say even your school's an Indian mascot, and then they want you to play the cute little Indian, which they did to me because they think it's fun when it's really not that fun. And we need to reevaluate, what we think we know about Native culture, what we think what is okay. Again, I would encourage you to go to hashtag Native Twitter, learn about indigenous people. Damn, one thing I forgot, and I'll leave you with this. Columbus Day. Columbus Day is every early October, right? And talk about a celebration of a jackass, somebody who committed a genocide. He would kill 13 Indians at a time, one for every 12 apostle. These statues are coming down. I feel that the holiday is going to go away on the federal level. Right now, a lot of states and cities are taking it upon themselves to abolish Columbus Day, but it is still a federally recognized holiday, which needs to go. He documented everything he did, the brutality that he basically ordered his men to do and did himself. It's horrendous. And then when people like to say, well, we're judging him by today's standards, not true. He was actually trundled back to Europe in chains for crimes against humanity. Look it up. All of what I'm telling you, you can definitely look up, okay? Even when it comes to things like mascots, there's empirical research, there's clinical data based on the harm it does to indigenous children and non-indigenous children. The American Psychological Association came out in 2005, said we need to ban native mascots because it perpetuates stereotypes and racism. So as we go into, I want you to evaluate everything you think you know about Native America and keep a sharp eye for people who are playing Indian. And then keep your ear open. Listen to how they justify it. Listen to how they explain it away and then continue their behavior. It's gross, it's ridiculous, but it's ubiquitous. It is very ubiquitous to see people playing Native American, dressing up, whether it's for a football game, a hockey game, Halloween, Thanksgiving, doesn't matter. A lot of the excuses are the same. I'm a quarter Cherokee, or they just continue to do it. They don't give a shit because they were taught to do it as kids. Let's see. Oh, last question, which is a really, really great question and very important. Is the Navajo Nation getting any better from COVID? No, they're not, which is why it's extremely important for us to really reevaluate, the luxuries we have in our life. Imagine you don't have running water. Imagine you don't have electricity. And, that's what they're telling everybody to do. Wash your hands 6 feet apart, all that. You could stay 6 feet apart, but imagine how much it's impacting Indian country. And as I've said before, Indigenous people are the smallest racial minority in our ancestral land. We have no lives to spare. And that's even at the same time that natives are being killed by police left and right. Look up that data. Well, I'll probably do another video on that later, but right now to talk about COVID in Indian country, a recent study came out saying that Indigenous people are 3 times more likely to be impacted by COVID than white people. Please look that up as well. Anyway, they got a river. Okay. Anyway, again, this is Simon Moya Smith. Please reevaluate the fall. Watch your own behavior. And as usual, please wear a mask 6 feet apart. Take care of yourselves. I'll do another video in 1 week, same time on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. In the meantime, send me questions, send me topics. If you have anything you want me to answer, send them my way. I'd be very happy.